Hey, Robert, how are you doing?
Good morning, Trey. How are you?
Good to have you on the show and great walk-up song, my friend. This is one of the better ones.
Great stuff.
I feel like I need to let it play for just a little bit, and we're not going to get to Margaritaville yet, but always a good one. And
Let it smooth,
rest in peace,
let it
Jimmy
soothe
Buffett.
in, right?
That's right. That's right. It's such a casual song. Are you a guitar player? Are you a musician? Do you like that kind of thing, or is this just
I
one of your
love
favorites?
music, and I really wish I had the ability to play a guitar like yours behind. I have an uncle that's very musically talented, but me, I'm two left feet when it comes to music. But as far as loving music and varieties of types, I'm all for music.
Well, you clearly enjoy great music, and that's what matters. And so, thanks for picking that song. That was a great song. And thanks for being on the show. Before we get started, I want to ask you a quick question. Are you a coffee drinker? Do you want a coffee mug? Or are you a water bottle drinker? Do you like water? Which one would you prefer? We're going to send you one today for being on the show.
I'm both. You can
Ooh.
go with the, geez, that's a real tough one. I'll go coffee.
Coffee, or maybe we'll surprise you and send you both. You never know. But we'll get one of these out to you today. We appreciate you being on the show today and taking some time to talk a little bit about your expertise. I do have a fun fact about you. We're going to start with this. You recently purchased a gravel bike back in October for venture riding, and you've been doing this for quite a long time. How'd you get into that?
Actually, cycling, I used to be a hockey player. I'm in Canada, so as most of us play hockey, I played hockey up to about the age 16, so kind of a higher level hockey, and I kept dislocating my shoulder. And I realized that I wasn't going to become the NHL player, right? So I
Right.
ended up departing, and through my sister, in fact, she had me volunteer go to a triathlon, and I used my old mountain bike, heavy duty mountain bike, at a triathlon, and then that got me inspired, and I got a road bike, and that led me to a race team. And through a fellow in my community, the Ongaro family, their sons Alex and Paul have both been to the Commonwealth Games. They were both track, like they're high end cyclists, and so through that I got connected to Juventus Cycling in Edmonton, and I spent many years, fantastic years, cycling with and racing around BC, Alberta, British Columbia, and Alberta, racing, and had a lot of fun. It really taught me about a lot about myself in the community. And then, wife, kids, life gets busy. I still biked, but not as much. And then my neighbor re-inspired me. And I ended up getting a road bike a few years ago, back in 2017, a newer version. I still have my old original race bike built by Bob Townsend, but bought another road bike. And then this year I ended up going into gravel because want to stay off the highways. I can't trust the drivers as they used to be. So
Mm.
want to stay off the roads, and gravel bike is that perfect mix between not, I don't want to be a crazy mountain biker flying down hills. So this gives me that mixed, they call it mixed terrain riding. So you can a little bit of road, a little bit of gravel, a little bit of single track, and have fun.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about a mountain bike and a triathlon. That's just double the work. That's probably a
It
little
was,
bit a little harder to
but I
harder to
was
get
young.
into.
I was pretty young. I was 15 years old, or 14
Just
at the
happy to
time.
be in the
So
race. That's right, just happy to
that's
be in
right.
the race. I looked up, what a gravel bike is, and essentially, it's almost like taking a road bike, like a 10-speed, and putting a front suspension on it, and somewhat kinda like mountain bike tires. A little
Yeah,
bit better
and
for
the
the gravel, right?
suspension's new. That's
Mm.
new. It's more the frame is a little bit more beefier than a road bike, and the terminology here in 2024 is that they're built more slack compared to a road bike. If I showed you my road bike and my gravel bike, you'd see the angles, and the slackness allows you to go down trails, and it's a little more comfortable
Yeah.
ride, not as aggressive. So yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't ride bikes, but I like to run, and when I do, I much prefer a trail as opposed to riding on the road. Not so much for the cars, maybe for the knees, what it does to my knees, but at the same point, I think it's more enjoyable to kind of be out there on, on a trail or on the gravel. That's a much
I'm a
more
runner as
enjoyable
well.
run.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
I can
cool. That's
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the lessons you've learned in some of these endurance races, and how has that helped you in your career?
I wouldn't say I'm a super endurance racer, but I would say that in fact,
More than most, Robert. More than most.
when I jumped into the world of freight brokering, I started from ground zero with no customers. And I remember one day, in fact, I was out for a run, and I'm like, I just had this vision I should be in Vancouver, and this is before I joined SPI Logistics. I've only been working with two brokerages, and when I started in the freight industry in 2008, and then I joined SPI in 2016. But summers around 2008, I was running, and I'm like, I should be in Vancouver. So I went out there and I set out and I met a bunch of customers. I had some set appointments, some open appointments, and through that, I met people. And in fact, two of the customers out there I've been servicing since that visit. I've been servicing since 2008.
Wow, that's incredible. And just had a vision for going to Vancouver. Now I can understand that. I've been to Vancouver. I honeymooned in Vancouver, believe it or not. Love that city. Where were you before that? Where did you start out?
So basically, I went to University of Alberta in Edmonton. My goal was actually to go focus on facility management, or tourism was my angle, because I have a degree in recreation administration from the University of Alberta, and I worked in that a little bit because prior to that I was a lifeguard. I worked for playgrounds, like I was a playground leader, lifeguard, swim instructor, and so I came out working at Grant MacEwan College. I was their kind of facility coordinator, booking space and such. And that was great being at Grant MacEwan College. And then a friend from university says, "Hey, I'm at Coca-Cola and that's great. And I think you'd be a great fit." Well, one thing led to another. Spent from 1998 to 2008 at Coca-Cola doing account management, district sales manager. I eventually became a district sales manager for the last 5 years. So I had a team I managed, overlooked the bulk channel. And then I made the big switch to the freight world, where I started from ground zero. But I took that, my salesmanship and my customer focus into that, started from nothing and slowly built up. I had a great mentor when I started in 2008 at the brokerage I was at. And then things changed in 2016 when I had to make a change. And I was looking for a company that had cross-border support. I needed LTL support. I was doing intermodal, full truckload, a variety of. I'm a generalist, I guess you'd say. A lot of broker agents are very mode specific, just reefer, just flatbed. But I focused more on customers. I looked at it from the standpoint, if I can service the customer in a variety of ways, that was my goal. And so came across SPI Logistics, and it was a perfect fit. And literally within, it was January 6th or the 8th or something. It was right at the very beginning of January. And within 2 days, we went through a list of my customers to verify no other agents had them. And within 2 days, I was up and running and didn't miss a beat. And
Wow, that's incredible. And we're going to dig into that here in just a little bit. But I have a question now. Knowing that you worked at Coca-Cola, I've been wondering this forever. Is there a difference between Diet Coke and Coke Zero? The ingredients look the exact same on the cans.
as far as, I never got into the chemical, but I can tell you it's a different sugar. Like a different, instead of
Ah,
Diet
okay.
Coke has aspartame and Coke Zero is something different, and that's what gives it a different taste. Because you have the
Interesting.
diet, you have the hardcore Diet Coke drinkers, and
My
then there's
wife,
the Coke Zero,
100%.
there's the Coke Zeros, and that's why they taste a little different. Is
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
Coke Zero was to, there's some people that liked Coca Cola but wanted something different, but didn't like Diet Coke, and that's when they came up with Coca Cola Zero, and that was that perfect hybrid.
Yeah, because it seemed like the ingredients were almost the exact same. I could never figure out the difference, but my wife is she's pretty strict about it. She's like Diet Coke and nothing else, and
Yeah.
I tend to move around a little bit. So good to know. Good to know. All right, so let's get back to what you're talking about. Being a generalist definitely makes it exciting because you get to do a lot of different things throughout the day. I tend to be a generalist about things as well, and so I can appreciate that. So when you came over to SPI, you're servicing customers in many different ways. What really made it a perfect fit working with SPI?
It was the fact that when I called and had a conversation, at the time it was Greg, and he was the kind of VP of operations at that time, Greg Davenport. And the conversation was perfect. When I asked, "Do you have this?" "Yes." "Do you have that?" "Yes." "Do you have this?" "Yes." And then he asked me questions, and then we went through the process, reviewing our customers, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit about the LTL, and that was a big part of my business. And they had everything I needed, and they had the cross-border support, dual currencies. They had all the software that I needed. It was just a perfect fit.
Yeah, it's nice when you find a home like that where it's just kind of plug and play. You don't really have to
That's
do
right.
much. In fact, it just enhances what you're currently doing and makes it even easier. It always makes it a
Well,
little
I
bit
think the
better.
other main thing was the fact that they were very strong with their cross-border freight and having the systems in place, and that I needed, because that was the bane of my business, is cross-border, is the
Yeah.
internal Canada and cross-border freight. And so they had the mixture of all of that gave me the opportunity. I can move my customers' freight within Canada, within the United States, and cross-border. So it's a full 360 opportunity.
Yeah, and the dual currencies is a big thing too, because a lot of brokerages in the states don't have some of those things in play,
That's
whether
right.
it's cross border to Canada or cross border to Mexico, and so just having that in play is obviously really helpful as well. So let's talk about LTL freight. Let's talk about some of the differences between USA, Canada, and cross border complexities. What is it about that kind of get you? I know you have a lot of interest in LTL and you have a lot of business in LTL. What is it about that kind of gets you excited?
Well, I guess as I mentioned, a lot of broker agents tend to be mode, like when I use the word mode, reefer,
Hmm.
flatbed, heavy haul, drive in specific. And some agents are actually mode and lane driven, where they only focus on dry van freight between Chicago and Texas, and Chicago, anything between Chicago and Texas, that's like their forte, right? That's their thing. And if someone calls them about something else, they kind of have the blinders on, and they're not interested. As I mentioned, my thought was, when I came into this industry of freight brokering, I realized, I wanted it to be somewhat recession proof. So I didn't go with the traditional, I'm just going to go after the grocery distributors. I thought, well, what if one industry goes down? I need another one to offset. And it's worked out for me because, well, I've been doing it since 2008, and I have the gamut from, things related to construction all the way to frozen. I've got the gamut of there, and they always seem like when one slows down, another one picks up, and it's this, you kind of ride. I've been riding that roller coaster of having that variety. And so tying in LTL, what it can do first and foremost is your customer can now really utilize you as one, it's going to get you a deeper relationship with the customer. So I'll give a simple example rather than a long story, and this can lead to others. So you're doing truckload freight for a customer. You deliver the last load. 2 days later, you get a call saying they get a call when they receive the load, the consignee, one of the pallets was the wrong product, the wrong SKU or wrong something. It got picked by their warehouse incorrectly. That customer is not planning to order another truckload for at least 2 weeks. Now they got this deal, but they're short the one pallet. So instead of the customer having to figure out how to do this, they can just call you up and saying, hey, we have this one pallet. We need to ship one pallet. And then when we need to pick up the other pallet and return it. That's that right there in itself. The second example I can give, the benefits of having the knowledge and the skill set to offer LTL service to your customers, project freight. So again, because I'm customer focused, if a customer is in construction and they're going to be building something, or they're taking on a contract, they're going to build something, whether it's a house, a hospital, or whatever. Well, sometimes you might be sending truckloads of a variety of equipment, bobcats and tools, flatbeds of that, but you may also be shipping a truckload of insulation or pallets of brick or something like that. But meanwhile, they may need to order some widgets and parts, one pallet here, one pallet there, and then they bring it to the yard, put it all together. Because you have that LTL ability, you can do that. Third way I can explain that's a benefit, you can do it. So if you're shipping a variety of things with your customers, like I have customers that ship out of, say, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Wisconsin. Sometimes when the stars align, and it happens more often than you think, they'll say, I got 2 skids here, 1 skid there. Sometimes it's better I just ship each one separately. Sometimes I pick up the 2 from here, 2 from there, bring them into, say, Toronto, and then I put them on intermodal rail and ship it as a half a container. So being creative and having these modes that you have the skill set for allows that your customer can totally rely on you to help their supply chain.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you're always wanting to learn, it sounds like. You're wanting to try to figure out these problems and not just have like the same problem every day to figure out, but actually learn some new problems and work with customers.
That's the bane of this business. Never stop learning.
Yeah, I love that. And I started my career at DAT in Portland, and DAT really has their load board for the United States, but then there's LoadLink up in Canada, which is kind of the sister company for that. And I learned at that point that there's quite a few differences between Canadian freight and freight here in the United States. What is that from an LTL perspective? How would you kind of categorize the difference between Canadian freight, domestic freight here in the U.S. and cross-border? What the complexities are of that?
Well, I'll touch on this and then I'll get onto the next. But the basic summary is, if you're taking an LTL freight, like one pallet in Canada going from, say, Vancouver to Toronto or Montreal, and you're taking one pallet from Houston, Texas to Chicago, and you're doing the price calculations, number one difference is in Canada, the pricing structure is much simpler. It's a cubic, it's right. Either actual weight or cubic weight, whichever is greater, pure and simple. So carriers have a model of they have a minimum charge, and then it goes up to 500. So if it's less than that, you get the minimum, or up somewhere's in between there. And then what happens is it's pretty simple. Like you see a chart, it's going to be 500 pound, 1,000 pound, maybe 15, 2,000. Typically it's 5, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and then 10,000. So basically, if the cubic weight, actual weight is whichever is greater, and we'll talk a little bit, we can dive into it. That's how you get priced. Whereas in the United States, the pricing model is based off of the NMFC, National Motor Freight Classification System. And often those NMFCs is based on the description of the goods. And then when you open up that NMFC number, it might be density based, It could be description based. So you could have a density based. So you have to know how to calculate the density, which will then cross-reference to the freight class. So it takes a lot of work to get to that freight class. When someone says, yeah, we ship a freight class 70, well, hang on a sec. We got to look into this. Just literally yesterday, I picked up in Georgia a pallet that's an MFC. It has subclasses, but not based on density. It's based on, it was a valve, and it's based on, is it aluminum or iron? There's different, how the component, so what it's made of was the determining factor to determine the NMFC. So that's the simple answer.
This reminds me of our system of measurement here in the United States. It seems like we make it more complex than it needs to be. We have our measurements. We got miles and feet and pounds, and the rest of the world has meters, kilometers, and a lot of simpler units of measure. Why do we make it so complicated, Robert? What's the deal?
I have to say Canada's a bit messed up. You know why? Because we're supposed to be all kilograms. Well, guess what? The price of hamburgers advertised on a pound basis.
Really? Oh, well, see,
Yes.
we've got a few things. We've got liters for a few things, like sodas and, some of those types of things, but not a lot of things. And we have meters only for certain sports, unpopular sports like swimming.
And in
track and
theory,
field.
like if you go to a job site and you're working, most of the time you're cutting wood, it's not in millimeters and centimeters, which would be more accurate. But a lot of times they say, cut me a piece of wood at 7 3/8.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So and if you go to the hardware store, you're not ordering 1,000 millimeters of wood.
Yeah, see, that's America's bad influence on Canada. That's what that is.
That's
We're
right.
not doing that to other countries
so
in the world.
mixed up.
We've done it to
It's
Canada. I know.
Yeah, we're a mishmash of both.
You've got the international, flair, which is way simpler, and then you've got us trying to work with us. And oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, the LTL classification system is pretty archaic, and it seems like, why do we still have this? Like, who has the stronghold? Why do we keep using it? But I think it's that.
Well, it's the way that they
American
structure. So
exceptionalism.
if I can kind of touch on one thing about LTL, because sometimes say if someone who's in the freight industry has seen this podcast and is thinking, boy, that sounds like a great idea. I should really offer LTL freight. Hang on a second here. You got to hold the horses for a second, and a couple things that I would bring up. If you're going to enter your customers and you want to try to provide service, a value-added services of LTL freight, something to consider. Number one, patience. LTL freight is not the kind of freight where you have a dry van load that picks up, say, a short haul that picks up on a Monday, delivers Wednesday. You've got the POD and it's invoiced by Thursday or Friday morning. That's not happening with LTL. Even if it's only a next day service, if everything's right, sure. But often it takes several days for the invoicing. And if there's problems, it can take weeks. I have a shipment from October that I'm going to finally finish this week because it had a claim.
Wow.
There's problems. So one is the patience. Are you a patient? If you're like, I just want to get the loads booked, delivered, invoiced, and moved on, then maybe LTL is not your forte. It might be, but next thing, willingness to learn. If you're not willing to dive deep into the LTL organizational structure and the NMFCs and the freight calculations and the processes involved, if you're not willing to get into the weeds of that, then it may or may not be a fit for you. The other thing to consider with LTL freight, it's very competitive. So it may not always be the highest dollar value, right? But your percentage wise, if you're making, 15 or 10 or 15% on a truckload of $2,000, you might be shipping a pallet that's $200, and you may only put $40 or $50 profit, $60 profit, depends what it is. And so the dollar value may not look good, but really it looks like 26, 50, 40%, 30%. It can look good on a percentage ways, but dollar value. The other thing is the appreciation of the entire complexities of it, because when you think about, if you compare a truckload, like right now, you and I could go out, create a trucking business tomorrow, hire 5, 6, 7 owner operators, both working. You and I could be working from our home. We split the country. You're dispatching these drivers. I'm dispatching those ones. And we're working from our home. We have 5 trucks. We have no facilities. The drivers work from their homes and they take the loads, and right, it's all done. There's no infrastructure there. There's just you and I. We're doing everything. We're dealing with the brokers and all the paperwork. And as we grow, okay, maybe we add 1 or 2 people. But essentially, it's pretty darn simple. If you go to open up an LTL business and you want to be an LTL carrier, you're buying you have to have a warehouse at minimum. You're going to need a bunch of trucks for the pickup and deliveries. You're going to need dispatchers. You're going to need a safety manager. You're going to need customer service staff. You're going to need someone to hire all these staff and manage all this. So right from the hop, their investment is huge, but yet they're expected in the marketplace to come out and provide low cost options and provide consistent daily service. So that is one thing. Like, you're going to get one thing about LTL freight is you're going to get that consistency. You can pick up, if it's 1 to 4 skids, you can literally call, unless it's a remote town where it's only serviced certain days of the week. I have that history there. There's a lot there, but generally, if you're in major cities, you can dispatch every single day and get a truck. Whereas sometimes with those truckloads, you may or may not get a truck that same day, maybe the next day, but LTL freight can be done daily.
Yeah, there's reasons why we have hundreds of thousands of truckload carriers and only hundreds of common LTL carriers. It's a hard game to get into. It's a lot of complexities and infrastructure and networks that have been created over a long time. And so it's definitely a learning game, that's for sure.
And I was going to say that the real thing the other thing is, there's the whole thing about claims, but appreciating that there's a claims process and there's that as well. But I think the best thing that LTL can do for you, if you're willing to dive in and learn, is it will take your customer relationship level from, say, the kind of an entry level to a risk kind of level, and I would say to an excellence level, meaning, because when you go into the LTL world, you have to become an educator and a consultant for your customer. You need to take the time to understand how their warehouse works. You want it so that you learn their products, that you get to the point where if they have, product A, B, C, or A20 and code D20 and D60s, all these different codes. And when your customer can call, say, yeah, we got a pallet that's going to have, 3 boxes of this, 4 boxes of that, and 3 boxes of this, and you know what it is, you can calculate and say, okay, that's going to be a 48 by 48 by 64 pallet, and it's going to weigh this much. Your customer doesn't have to tell you all the weights. I have that with customers. That is huge. And so, but part of that process, though, is when you enter and venture into the world of LTL, you need to look at how are your customers' freights. If their boxes always overhang the pallets because they always do truckloads, well, that's not suitable, because if boxes overhang up the footprint on the pallet, that shipper's risk and liability, which will lead to a claim. And then the customer is disappointed because you didn't educate them that, well, yeah, it shipped out and there's a claim, but we can't put the claim through because your pallet wasn't professionally packaged to withstand the rigors of LTL freight. So you have to be an educator. You have to teach them. If they're only putting a little bit of wrap and they say, well, we want to do LTL. Okay, how much is it going to cost to buy a banding machine and band it? All right, you got to educate them on this whole process. So that's what it does. It just takes you to that next level with your customers.
Yeah, it creates a much stickier, it has the potential to create a much stickier customer in that regard. Are you going to your customers' warehouses to talk them through that? Do you do that through video conferencing? Like, how do you help educate your customers?
Well, a couple of ways. Obviously, I can't go to all mine because I got customers all around US and Canada, but the ones I can, I do go. And if I go, I'm walking into there with my tape measure. Never leave home without. I actually have a bag in that closet behind. That's my PPE bag. So when I go to my customers' visits, I got a safety vest, I got a hard hat, I got steel-toed shoes, and I've got my tape measure. And when I go, I look. If I'm going to the warehouse, I come in prepared, and I'm measuring everything. I don't even ask. I just start measuring, and then I take pictures. And if in doubt, I ask my customer to send me a picture. But you have to find different ways to get the information, or you get it from the carrier. Or if the freight came from another city and it's going to be passing, like it's going to be delivering to the city near me, I'll go and find a way to get get pictures. I just try to gain insight however I can. The more that I learn, and I'll keep talking to my customer and say, hey, would you mind helping me get some information about your product, so that as I learn, if I can research it, whatever I can do to gain that extra step to make myself differentiate. Because my goal as a broker agent, whether it's LTL, whatever mode, the ultimate goal of any broker agent is that when a customer says, we just won a project, we just won some big sales where we need to ship all this product, right? Some sales rep sold something that they need to ship, and they're in this conference meeting in a room. And when they say we need to ship, that the first thing that comes up is that Rob or Trey or whoever the agent is, that's our person, that we're going to rely on them.
That's right.
Yep,
I love that.
That's what you want.
Not your first rodeo. I'd love to see a picture of you with all your gear on out there, just walking in, measuring. I can see you just taking over, taking control in there, and doing well, which I'm sure your customers really, really appreciate that. So that's awesome to hear. All right, we got to pause and play a little game. We like to have a little fun on the show. And Robert, today we're going to play a little game of Would You Rather.
Oh,
All right, Robert. The way this game works is we're going to put some statements up on the screen, some kind of this or that type of thing. So, would you rather do this or that? You got to pick one and tell us why real quick, and then we'll move on to the next one. The first one we have for you today is: would you rather be stuck in a romantic comedy with your worst enemy, or in a horror movie with your best friend?
I'm going to go with the horror movie with your best friend.
Do you like horror movies? Or is it because of the best friend? It's just being with somebody.
I
with
think
the best friend.
someone I'd rather be with someone that I can trust and talk about than my worst enemy, I guess.
It'd be more adventurous, that's for sure. And I actually have a best friend who loves horror movies, so I think that would work out well for me. So I'm with you on this. I'm going the same way. Horror movie with best friend, 100%. All right, next one. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Oh, wow.
That's an interesting one.
That is, but you know what? The animals would be cool because I think they would have some deep thoughts to share with us humans that they could say sometimes how crazy we are. But I think if you've ever traveled, being able to speak languages is huge because you know what? There's a lot of people around the world. We're all the same. And the only sometimes that differentiates us is our language that we can't communicate clearly. And having that ability to speak to people around the world would be huge.
So you're on the practical side of every language, which certainly looks better in public. If you're speaking to animals, people might think you're weird. But if you can speak languages, people are like, wow, look at that guy. He's so smart.
Exactly.
So we go that route. Animals would be interesting, though. Would be interesting. I agree with you on that. That would be interesting. All right, round 3. Which one? Would you rather have a knife when you need a spoon or a spoon when you need a knife?
Spoon all day long.
Really?
Oh, for sure. I can cut lots with a spoon. I can dig
Possibly
things.
if it's sharp enough. Maybe if it's a plastic spoon, you're done. I see. I kind of go. I got it the other way. I can do anything with a knife because the opposite side of a knife is not sharp, so I could eat with that side if I.
Oh, true.
True.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that's good.
Like you can do. There's more possibilities with a knife to cut things to actually eat. Sometimes the spoon doesn't.
And it's actually easier to carry. It's flat.
Could you cut a steak with a spoon? That would be interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think I could eat cereal with a knife. I think. A little bit.
It'd be
a little bit.
Oh, that
would be tough.
Now, I see you make some funny videos. That would be a shorty. That would be the viral shorty of the day.
I might have to do it this afternoon. Make a little video of me eating, trying to eat cereal with a knife. I like where you're going with that, Robert. Okay, next one. Would you rather have to use shrimp flavored toothpaste or deodorant that smells like cheese? Who's coming up with these? All right, which one? Shrimp.
I'm going to go with the shrimp flavored toothpaste because at least you know what? It kind of seems exotic. Like, hey, this guy was eating shrimp. That seems kind of cool.
Right. And you can always wash it down with something else later. You can kind of get over it, right? But cheese deodorant. What is that? Nobody wants to smell like cheese. Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's terrible. All right. Final round, Robert. Here we go. Almost done with this. All right. Would you rather eat all your food with your hands or use utensils with only your non-dominant hand? Oh, we just talked about this yesterday with a friend of mine. Which would you rather do? Eat with your hands only or have to use your non-dominant hand?
I think eat with my hands only, just because I have a funky hand. My left hand, that's the non-dominant. It's webbed, it's smaller, and so it's just not the same.
Might not work.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. It would work, but it's just I'd rather.
And there's something fun about eating with your hands too. Kind of something enjoyable, especially if it's something you can lick later. Like Doritos are great because you get a little extra afterwards. Get a little extra bonus. So
exactly.
I'm with you on that. I think that's a good one.
Primitive too. It's kind of primitive as well, right? So.
That's right. Well, Robert, thank you for playing Would You Rather. That was fun. I always enjoy having those conversations. And we have one more. We have a random question of the day. We always like to throw this out, just something kind of fun. So here's our random question of the day. What would a world populated by clones of you be like? So the world is just all Roberts. What would that be like?
Oh boy. My wife would sure have comments about that. I think
a lot of cycling going on, probably a lot of races. Everybody be on the bikes.
The only thing I guess I could say is I'm a pretty high energy person, so I'd say that's a positive.
It is.
The unfortunate thing is that the world would not have a lot of music. We could pretend that we would think that we're singing, but I guess you know what though, if it's all me, I would think I'm sounding really good. So if it's all of us, we're all going to sound really good. But
that's
to anyone else, it just wouldn't be there. And then you know what? I'm not I love to research, so that part's good. I'm willing to dive into research, but and I'm okay with math, but math is not my strong point. So to design a bridge and calculate a bridge could be a real. There could be a lot
Could
of
be a
rivers
problem.
without crossings. We'd have to
Could be
use,
a
but
problem.
that's okay. I like to kayak and paddleboard, so the whole world would just have to kayak and paddleboard across rivers because I couldn't build a bridge. So
It'd be a
that
very
would be the
natural
consequence.
world. I like it. I like your creativity with that. That's awesome. I love that. That's so good. What a question. That's a nice random question of the day. All right, Robert. So I got one more question to ask you about your work, and then we're going to get you out of here and get you on your way today. So, you've been with SPI for a long time. What keeps you at SPI? What is it about working with the team at SPI that keeps you around?
The support. You've got an accounts payable, accounts receivable team, and you got a client care team, and then you got upper management. From Anita to Mark to Joe, Mike. There's Peter, and then Mitch, the owner. We've got, if you need support in any capacity, whether you're dealing with an issue or you have a huge prospect, if you need support, there's support. And that includes, I've had the support of Anita helping me hire people. I actually, to show the complexities of freight, of LTL freight, is I actually have a freight auditor that works for me that I hire. So 20 hours a week, that person's there to help me keep on top of my LTL freight for tracking, tracing, and billing purposes so that it makes it a little bit easier for SPI's back end. And I try to be, so that things match up and everything is, and I'm dealing with all the complexities behind the scenes so that when it's all said and done, it's easy once it hits the back office. And that's just because of the nature of my business. I'm not saying that's necessary for all agents, but for my particular book of business, it just works. I think it works a little bit better.
Yeah,
So
and
I
I got
think
to
that
agree with
that
you.
combination there.
I kind of agree with you. When I met the team at SPI, I could just tell that they love taking care of their agents, and it's real passion for them, and they mean it. They're not just saying it; they really mean it. I got to speak with the support staff when I was up there. Just phenomenal people, And so it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Robert, and to talk about your experience with SPI. Thanks for being so creative and having fun with us today. We're going to get you out of here with a little more Margaritaville. So great walk up song for that.
Is that what? Kudos to you and congratulations to you. You don't talk about yourself a lot, but you have quite the accolade of accomplishments in your career. And sometimes in our life, what we do in one part, like you talked about, you've had an accomplished sales career, but you were a teacher. And when you're a teacher, you're a salesperson, right? You have to sell to the kids to teach. You have to talk to your principals away, and you got to talk to parents. You're always selling, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
led you to the success you're having today. So
I
congratulations to you.
appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. You're welcome on the show anytime, my friend. You have to have me back on the show. But
Yeah.
thanks again for being on the show today. We'll see you real soon.
Thanks so much.